The restaurant was quiet that Tuesday morning, the kind of hush that only exists in the small window between breakfast and lunch. Sunlight filtered in through the large windows, casting a warm golden hue across the polished wooden floors. Outside, the world moved on in the buzz of traffic, the occasional dog walker, and the rising hum of a city getting on with its day, but inside, the restaurant sat still, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something. Martin Cole stood across the street, a to-go coffee in hand, watching. He'd owned the Copper Spoon for 5 years, building it from nothing but a rundown building with peeling paint and rusted pipes. Now it was one of the most beloved spots in town. He'd hired the best chefs, cultivated a menu that drew in foodies and families alike, and trained every employee to reflect his vision of heartfelt service. But lately, something felt off. Sales were dipping slightly. Online reviews were still decent, but some hinted at less than stellar experiences. He trusted his managers, yes, but something in his gut told him that he needed to see the restaurant from the other side, for once, not as the boss, but as the customer. That's why Martin was dressed down today. A faded hoodie, jeans, and a scruffy baseball cap pulled low. He even wore an old pair of glasses with non-prescription lenses just to complete the disguise. He took a deep breath, tossed the rest of his coffee, and crossed the street. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped in, and the scent of roasted garlic and fresh herbs welcomed him instantly. It still smelled like home. That was good. He scanned the restaurant quickly, noting the layout, the lighting, and the way the silverware was arranged. His eyes settled on the young woman standing behind the host's podium. "Hi there," she said brightly. "Welcome to the Copper Spoon. Just you today?" Martin nodded and offered a small smile. "Yeah. Just me." "Perfect," she replied, grabbing a menu. "Booth or table?" "Booth's fine." As she led him to the back of the restaurant, Martin studied her. She couldn't have been more than 25, maybe younger. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and there were faint shadows beneath her eyes, signs of someone who hadn't been sleeping much. Her name tag read Emily. Once seated, Martin thanked her, and she smiled before handing him the menu. "Take your time. I'll be right back with some water." As she walked away, Martin couldn't help but wonder about her. Something about her felt familiar, not in a we've met kind of way, but in a deeper, human sense. Maybe it was the slight wobble in her step, or the way she'd smiled even though her eyes looked like they hadn't seen joy in weeks. Over the next hour, Martin did what he came to do. He observed. He watched how other servers interacted with customers, how long food took to arrive, how clean the bathrooms were, and how the ambience had changed since his last official visit. But more than anything, he watched Emily. She moved like someone who was holding a world of weight on her shoulders but had no choice but to carry it anyway. She was polite, even graceful, with each guest. She anticipated needs, offered substitutions before anyone asked, and remembered small details like how one regular preferred no ice in her iced tea or how the older gentleman at table 6 liked his soup with 2 packs of salt. Martin was impressed. But then he saw something that stopped him cold. Emily stepped outside the back door near the kitchen, presumably for a short break. Martin followed discreetly, pretending to go to the restroom, and glanced out the side window. She was crying. Not just a single tear or a brief sniffle, this was full-body sobbing, the kind that comes from somewhere deep, a place that's been holding back the flood for too long. She was alone, shoulders shaking, wiping her face with the sleeve of her uniform. Then, just as quickly, she composed herself, took a deep breath, and walked back inside like nothing happened. Martin returned to his booth, suddenly uninterested in finishing his meal. When Emily brought the check, she smiled politely again. "Thank you for coming in today. I hope everything was okay." Martin studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Everything was great. Thank you, Emily." She paused. "You remembered my name." "Of course. You're memorable." Her cheeks turned pink, and she laughed softly. "I don't know about that, but, thank you." He reached into his wallet and pulled out some cash. Far more than the bill required. As he handed it to her, he slipped in a folded note. She looked confused. "What's this?" Just something I want you to read after your shift. Promise me you won't open it until then. She hesitated, but then nodded slowly. Okay. I promise. Martin left quietly, and Emily watched him go. There was something oddly familiar about him, but she couldn't place it. She tucked the note into her apron and moved on to the next table. The day dragged on. Emily covered 3 more tables, cleaned up a spilled drink from a toddler's tantrum, broke a glass tray, and had to deal with a customer who was furious that their eggs weren't runny enough. She did it all with that same smile. That same quiet strength. When closing finally came, she was exhausted. Her feet throbbed, her back ached, and her heart felt heavy in her chest. She made her way to the break room, where the lockers were, and remembered the note. She pulled it out and unfolded it, expecting maybe a thank you or a kind compliment. But it was more than that. It read, Emily. Today I came into this restaurant not just for a meal, but for a truth. I'm the owner of the Copper Spoon. You didn't know because I didn't want you to. I needed to see things for myself. And what I saw today was you. You are extraordinary. Not just because of how well you do your job, but because of how deeply you care, even when it costs you. I saw the way you handled guests. The way you remembered small details. The way you held yourself up even when it was clear you were barely holding on. I saw you step outside to cry. I don't know what pain you're carrying, Emily, but I want you to know that you are not alone. Starting tomorrow, I want you to meet with me. I don't just want you as a waitress. I want to offer you a scholarship through our community program. I want to help you grow, whether in this industry or beyond it. Because people like you don't just deserve kindness, they deserve opportunity. Thank you for showing me what strength really looks like. I came in today pretending to be someone else, but you showed me who I really want to be. Martin Cole. Owner, the Copper Spoon. Emily stared at the note, hands trembling. Tears blurred her vision. For the first time in months, they weren't tears of sadness, but of release, of hope. She clutched the note to her chest and let herself cry. But this time, she cried because someone finally saw her. Emily didn't sleep that night. The letter lay on her nightstand, folded neatly, as if it were something sacred, something too important to crumple or misplace. She kept glancing at it, as if needing to reassure herself it hadn't vanished, that it had really happened. Her mind played Martin's words over and over like a song on loop. I don't know what pain you're carrying, Emily, but I want you to know that you are not alone. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to believe she wasn't. Morning came in shades of gray. Rain pattered lightly against her small bedroom window. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. She tiptoed past the crib in the corner, careful not to wake Lily, her 2-year-old daughter, her reason for breathing, and the source of both her strength and her fear. Emily hadn't planned to be a mother at 21. She hadn't planned for the man she loved to walk out 2 months after Lily was born, leaving only a hastily written note on the counter and half of the rent unpaid. Since then, life had been a battle. She had dropped out of community college to work full-time. She'd taken the job at the Copper Spoon because the hours were flexible and tips could be decent. She'd smiled when she was dying inside, laughed when her bank account was on the verge of overdraft, and spent nights holding her baby while secretly wondering if she was failing her. But now, someone had seen her. Not just as a waitress. Not as a struggling single mom. But as a person. Later that afternoon, she stood outside the Copper Spoon side entrance, the same spot where she had broken down just the day before. This time, she wasn't crying. She was nervous, yes, but there was a sliver of something else poking through the worry, hope. She stepped inside and found Martin waiting in the private office near the back. He rose from his chair with a warm smile that crinkled at the edges of his eyes. I'm glad you came, he said. Emily nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't think I would. But I had to. That letter, you don't know what it meant. Martin gestured for her to sit. Actually, I do. Because I've been where you are. Maybe not exactly, but I've been a single parent. I lost my wife when my son was 5. I didn't know what I was doing. I made every mistake in the book. But I learned, painfully, that the only thing worse than falling is falling alone. Emily blinked, surprised. Somehow, she'd never pictured the well-dressed, confident restaurant owner as someone who'd carried grief like that. I don't want to intrude on your life, he continued. But I meant what I said. I see something in you. Not just hard work, but heart. And heart can't be taught. It's rare. And I want to invest in that. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were 2 documents. One was a scholarship application for a local business certification program, completely paid for. The other was a formal offer to train Emily as an assistant manager at the Copper Spoon while she studied, meaning a better paycheck, more flexible hours, and built-in support. Emily stared at the papers like they were written in a language she didn't understand. I don't know what to say, she stammered. You don't have to say anything yet, Martin said gently. Take it home. Think about it. Talk to whoever you need to talk to. I just want you to know the door is open. But Emily shook her head slowly. No. I don't need time. I know what this means. I know what you're offering. And I'm ready. I want this. I want something more, for me and for Lily. Martin smiled wider. Then we start tomorrow. The next few months were like stepping into the sun after years in the dark. The change wasn't instant. There were still hard days, nights when Lily wouldn't sleep, mornings when the weight of everything threatened to crash down again. But now, Emily had support. She trained alongside senior staff, learned how the business ran from the inside out, and even began helping with scheduling and budgeting. Her confidence grew, slowly but surely. She attended classes twice a week, studying late into the night while Lily slept beside her. Sometimes she dozed off mid-page, but she always picked herself back up the next day. Martin checked in regularly, but never hovered. He gave her room to rise. Then came the morning that would change everything again. Emily arrived early, as usual, but found Martin pacing the dining area, phone in hand, looking visibly shaken. What's wrong? She asked. He looked up, blinking like he hadn't realized she was there. It's my son. Jason. He was in a car accident last night. Nothing life-threatening, thank God. But he's shaken. I need to fly to Boston to be with him, of course, Emily said immediately. Go. I can cover things here. Martin hesitated. Are you sure? She met his eyes, steady and strong. Yes. I've got this. For the first time, he truly handed over the keys, not just literally, but symbolically. The restaurant, the staff, the operations, they were in her hands now. And she didn't let him down. While Martin was away, Emily kept things running like clockwork. She handled supply delays, resolved a customer dispute with grace, and even stepped in when a chef called in sick. Her leadership earned her the respect of the entire team. Some even whispered she was more natural at it than the last 2 assistant managers combined. When Martin returned a week later, the place was thriving. But something had shifted even more than he expected. Emily wasn't just the waitress who got a shot. She was now a leader. And one night, after closing, he asked to speak with her privately again. I want to make it official, he said. You've earned more than a title. You've earned a future here. I'd like to offer you the role of general manager. With full salary, benefits, and leadership over this location. Emily's breath caught. I don't know what to say, again. Say yes, Martin said with a smile. Because you've become someone this place can't do without. She said yes. Through tears. Through laughter. Through disbelief. She said yes to a life she never thought she could have. The years that followed were full of milestones. Emily finished her degree. She eventually bought a small home not far from the restaurant. Lily started school and would often come in to visit Mommy's restaurant, beaming with pride. And then, one evening, on the 5th anniversary of that fateful day, Martin handed Emily another note. This time, it wasn't folded. It was framed. Inside it was a single sentence. The people we choose to believe in can become the people who change the world. I wrote that the day I met you, he said softly. And you proved me right. Emily smiled as she looked out over the restaurant floor, full of life and light. Customers laughed. Waiters buzzed. A young hostess greeted a couple at the door. It was everything she had once only dreamed of. And she hadn't just found a job. She'd found a purpose. A place. A second chance.